It is a good time to be a Godzilla fan. Ralph Perez from Strange Planet here. Welcome to the channel. If you like what you see here, please consider subscribing. Click on the subscribe button and tap on the bell for future notifications. Okay, so in a few short days, I already got my tickets. I'm going off to see Godzilla, King of the Monsters. It's going to be released in theaters on the 31st. And I, for one, am very excited. Why am I so excited? Well, has nothing to do so much with the 2014 Godzilla that Gareth Edwards released. Though I did like it, it had its issues. A lot of people complained that there wasn't enough Godzilla and enough monsters. Fine. I agree with that. But it was still a good story. It opened up to something that we now call the Monsterverse. The Monsterverse is this new thing in the movies that's gonna revolve around the stories of these incredible titans. That's what they call them in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Titans of these monsters that are gonna go and either try to destroy the earth or try to save it. Godzilla is one of the saviors, or at least the one that the top apex predator, alpha they call it, to protect the earth. What other threats? In 2014, we saw it fight against something called the Mutos. Now, again, what is so special about the Monsterverse? Well, I know a lot of you people out there, you know, in my interactions with some of you, the people that are more young, that are younger than me, I'm not talking about millennials, really. I'm talking about just people that were born more in the 80s or in the 90s. They didn't really get a understanding of, you know, they weren't really exposed to Godzilla and all the other monsters that showed up, that started much longer even before I was born. So I'm here to give you a crash course in Monsterverse 101. The first one is obviously Godzilla himself. Godzilla first came out in 1954 as a Japanese film called Godzilla, which is the actual name of the monster. And it was Japan's response to the dawn of the nuclear age, which sadly and tragically was introduced to them in a very horrific way at the end of World War II. Following some nuclear tests in the South Pacific, they awakened this giant dinosaur that was in hibernation for millions of years, and it got radiated by the radiation of the atomic weapon and has risen now from the depths of the sea to attack and destroy Japan, and possibly the world. Throughout the length of time, as the movies progressed with Godzilla, made by this film studio called Toho Studios, and what they did was they continued to make these movies, and with them came other monsters eventually that they created. There were 3 series that's been split up throughout the last 60 years. The first one called the Showa series, which started with 1954's Godzilla and ended with the Terror of Mechagodzilla back in 1974, I believe. In between all that, we got introduced to a whole bunch of other monsters, some of which I will mention in this Monsterverse course. The second series is called the Heisei series, which started in 1985 with the advent of Godzilla in 1985 here, 1984 in Japan, where it was first released. Ended with 1995's Godzilla vs. Destroyer. Now, let's make this very clear. I'm going to make this as clear as I possibly can. The Godzilla that came out in 1998 with Matthew Broderick, here, that was released by TriStar, did not really depict the real Godzilla. It was not Godzilla. It just wasn't. So, I need you guys to just kind of, in the Monsterverse, use your brain right now and erase that movie from your minds. Erased? Gone? Good. Millennium Godzilla started in the year 2000 with Godzilla 2000. Japan came back and brought Godzilla back and did another series of films throughout the first decade of the 21st century. I believe that one ended with Monsters All Out Attack, which was basically a lot of crazy monsters coming out to attack Godzilla, sent by aliens, and Godzilla was just kept on like beating them all. Some of them were newer. Some of them were from the classic, from the other show, from the other series. This is called the Millennium series. 2014 came. And American Godzilla was again reintroduced into the theaters, called aptly named Godzilla, directed by Gareth Edwards. I, for one, was first online. The previews got me excited. I looked at the design of the new Godzilla, and I was like, okay, this is more like it. This is not, what was that other movie that came out with Matthew? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't remember that anymore. This was more like it. And it was amazing. This is the beginning now of what's called the Monsterverse. Then Japan decided to follow up with another remastered revision of Godzilla called Shin Godzilla. It came out just a few years ago, in 2016, I believe. And it was released in Japan. There was some limited showings here in the United States. I went to the theater to see it. I loved it. I actually ordered a copy. I have it on Blu-ray. It's great. It's definitely a different version of Godzilla. I would not particularly say it's my favorite version of him. I definitely like the legendary one now, the one that they're showing here in the theaters now. Okay, enough with Godzilla. Now that I got the series and all that, now I'm just going to give you the Monsterverse. Now, this Monsterverse is essentially what the science team called Monarch depicted and first introduced to us in the 2014 Godzilla, and also introduced to us in the post-credit scenes in Kong, Skull Island. It shows us that there are a lot of monsters. If you see the previews to this movie coming out, there's about 17 of them scattered all over the earth. There are these monsters they call the Titans that we either destroy or save the planet. The ones definitely confirmed to be at least 5, or if anything, I think 6 of them, we already know. The other one is Rodan. What is a Rodan? Well, Rodan is essentially a form of pterosaur, like those flying reptiles from the, from the age of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic era. Except it's huge, it's radiated, but it's more of a volcanic pterosaur. It was first introduced in a movie aptly named in the mid-1960s called Rodan. And just like the original Rodan, that they emerged from a volcano, this one, if you see the previews, emerged from a volcano. What's Rodan? There it is. It looks like I said, it looks like a pterosaur. It's huge, and it has the ability to fly at supersonic speeds and wipe out entire cities just by simply flying over them. Doesn't even have to step on anything. All you have to do is fly, because the wind and the wind gusts that it creates when it blows over something will just completely knock you out. Another famous monster from the Toho series that's coming over to the legendary Monsterverse series is this one right here, a giant moth called Mothra. What's a Mothra? Mothra was a god that was worshipped by these native peoples in the original Showa series that would reincarnate over and over again, moth to caterpillar, moth to caterpillar, moth, and it would help protect the earth from other monsters. There was even a Godzilla versus Mothra. But eventually, like these other movies, they just, some movies, they're together and they fight together. Other movies, they're against each other. They have a rocky relationship, those two. It's a gigantic moth with these amazing psychic powers. Usually it's accompanied by these 2 little fairies that are about yay big. I don't think we're going to see that in this movie. That's a little far-fetched, but it's about the size of action figures and stuff like that. It's hilarious when you see the old films, because when you see a bad guy grabbing them, they look like they're grabbing 2 Barbie dolls. It's like the funniest thing. Another monster into the Monsterverse is the big challenge for Godzilla in this upcoming film. This one right here, King Ghidorah, 3-headed monster. First introduced back in the mid-60s as Monster Zero. King Ghidorah basically has a link to, according to the Monarch website. I'm going to put the link below, because there's an actual website where you go to the Monarch science. It's called Monarch Sciences. monsterverse.com or something like that, and you get to learn about what these monsters are, at least the ones that have been exposed. Not all of them, just the ones that have been exposed. King Ghidorah is the threat, the current threat, and is supposedly an alpha in the world to try to destroy it. And that's the threat that Godzilla has to overcome and defeat in this movie. And it lives up to the hype because King Ghidorah and Godzilla have always been lethal enemies. They've never befriended each other in the other series. They've always went like this. So this movie definitely is going to depict that. And King Ghidorah was always the threat to humanity, and Godzilla was always the one to fight and defeat King Ghidorah. And we're going to see that in an incredibly massive scale on the big screen in just a few days. What does King Ghidorah do? Well, he flies. He has 3 heads. He's basically has this electrical power where it comes out of all 3 mouths. He looks like a dragon, essentially. A dragon with 3 heads. And it's kind of golden, scaly. This is basically it right here. King Ghidorah. Right here. King Ghidorah. You know, 3 heads. He's got 2 tails, right? 2 tails, 3 heads. It has these wings, and it serves. It basically is a threat to the human race, and it's gonna. This is the thing that Godzilla's gonna try to fight off, and hopefully defeat. We'll see if it happens in this movie. But wait, there's more. Those are the monsters we know about. There are other monsters that are predicted to show up. There's one that I've been hearing a lot on the social media called the Muto Prime, which is the main Muto. It's something bigger and badder than the Mutos we saw in the 2014 Godzilla that's going to serve as a threat as well. I could be wrong on that one, but I wouldn't necessarily call them part of the Monsterverse, though I would have called the Mutos themselves definitely one of the 17 monsters that the website says that exists. Another clear monster that exists in the Monsterverse is Kong. Okay, a couple years ago, we saw Kong Skull Island, and we saw the story. I saw the story. Great movie, great story. It's about a giant ape that's the last of its kind. It's different from the ape that everybody classically knows as the one that climbed up the Empire State Building and came from, this is a different Kong. That's not that Kong, okay? This one's far larger, and it's still growing because it's still relatively young. The other, again, like I said, it's the last of its kind. The other, the rest of its family, the rest of its species was wiped out by those creatures, those crawlers that lived under the ground that Kong fought off in the movie, if you remember those. So now Kong is kind of on his own on Skull Island. But with the announcement that they're going to make a Godzilla versus Kong, he ain't going to be alone that much longer. Those are the monsters that have already been revealed to be part of the Monsterverse. What other monsters are going to be revealed? We don't know clearly, but if they've made any further deals with Toho for the rights of it, I'm going to make these following predictions for at least 5 more monsters, and they're going to be the following. Gigan. What is a Gigan? Gigan is one of Godzilla's notorious foes. Gigan is this crazy cyclops-looking creature with hooks for arms, like a buzzsaw on his chest. He flies. He has like a beak. He looks really weird. I don't even know it knows what it is. But all I know is that he has faced off against Godzilla in a couple of films back in the Showa and in the Heisei series. And it was, it was a challenge for Godzilla. He's definitely a formidable opponent. So get ready to possibly see Gigan make his return in the Monsterverse. Here's another one I would like to see come back to the Monsterverse. Destroyer. Destroyer was actually a product of a long-term product of the oxygen destroyer introduced in the original 1954 Godzilla. They say that some ancient crustaceans kind of like took in the chemicals from the oxygen destroyer after the first Godzilla died, and they grew, evolved, and by the time 1995, 1996 came about, it turned into this giant creature that served as a threat to everybody. Godzilla was having his own issues at the time. If you see that movie, it's a great movie. It closed the Heisei series, so to speak. Um, and it was just fun. It was just fun. But this destroyer was definitely a monster. He was scary. He was scary. He was huge. He was dangerous, and he was deadly. And I would love to see him as part of the Monsterverse. Another monster I would like to see as part of the Monsterverse is King Caesar. King Caesar first showed up in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla as one of the second to the one of the I believe it was the second to the last movie of the Showa series. He was this ancient god that you had to sing a song to wake him up. I'm not kidding. You got to see the movie to understand it. It's some kind of chant or something like that. But in any case, they woke him up to fight off Mechagodzilla because Mechagodzilla it's basically a robot Godzilla. For those of you who don't understand it, they thought the real Godzilla had died at that point, so they had to get this other monster to try to defeat him, but he wasn't doing so well. And then the real Godzilla showed up to kind of like help him out. King Caesar is pretty cool. You know, he can jump around. He can beam things out of his eyes. He's pretty. That movie is fun to watch. I would recommend that. I'll make another video about what Godzilla movies to watch. What are my favorite? Another monster that would be a great addition to the Monsterverse would be Hedorah, the smog monster. This movie came out, I believe, in 1971, Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, as part of the Showa series. Hedorah is an alien creature born of sludge and pollutants from the, from our toxic environment. You know, remember, this is the early 70s, so they were already about saving the earth, saving the trees, saving the whales. We're putting too much crap in the air, in the water, in the soil. And so, as a result, this monster comes out of nowhere. And let me tell you something. This monster scared the living daylights out of me as a kid. I was like, literally, this was the only monster that actually scared me. And then when Godzilla would come, I would actually be scared for Godzilla because I don't know how Godzilla can fight up against a thing like this. I mean, he eventually did, but boy, that was... Ugh. You know, that monster was... And that movie was disturbing. If you watch it, you'd be like, little kids that watch, love Godzilla. But when you watch that, I'm like, at that time, I don't know if it's good for children to watch it because you see some serious deaths in that thing that you wouldn't want to see in an early 70s film. And finally, the last monster that I am almost certain, I am so almost certain that he's there already. He's in... That Monarch is tracking him. He's in the Monsterverse. He's going to show up is this one right here, Anguloris. Anguloris was the first monster outside of Godzilla created by Toho. He was in the second Godzilla film ever made called Godzilla Raids Again. Came out in 1955, 56, somewhere around there. And him and Godzilla like fought it off big time in that flick. But as time went on, he became more of a... aide or a buddy to Godzilla as they went off to fight other monsters. He shows up in a lot of them. He's in quite a few of the movies in both series. He is kind of like akin to an Ankylosaurus from the Cretaceous period of the age of the dinosaurs. Big spiny back, like a turtle in a way. And he made this kind of cool sound. And he would jump around and jump on you and use his back to kind of like gouge you out. Very strong monster, very powerful. He would burrow underground, and that would be his method of traveling, really. That monster's freaky. So, anyway, those are my monsters. These are the monsters of the Monsterverse that I believe should be a part of. The first 5 I mentioned are part of the Monsterverse already, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited that this is going to happen. I think this movie is going to really wake people up to who Godzilla really is. If you guys are not really familiar with the Godzilla universe, get to know him. There's so many movies out about him. You could buy Blu-rays, DVDs. You can go to a freaking gas station and probably find it in one of those buckets or something. They're that common. You can order them on Amazon, whatever. You know, like just get one. Get a couple, you know. Definitely watch Kong Skull Island, okay? If you really want to get onto the Monsterverse train, watch Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island. Those are the two you definitely want to watch before running off to see Godzilla King of the Monsters. So get ready for that. I love Godzilla. I love the whole concept of him. I love his power. I love his strength. I love what he has done, what he can do, and what he's going to do. What do you guys think about the Monsterverse with Godzilla and all the other monsters? Talk to me. Comment below and share with me what you think. What's going to happen with Godzilla King of the Monsters. And stay tuned for my exclusive review of the movie as soon as I come out of the theater to see it. This is Ralph Perez from Strange Planet. Take care.